Thank you. Is there another? Please state your name.
Greetings, Damon Barone, Alief ISD, parent, taxpayer, and alumnus. This is the first year which the district has shown multiple years of Alief ISD data when publicly presenting the annual performance report. So let me first congratulate you and thank you for that. Year after year, you all have simply presented 1 year of Alief's data compared to data from the state of Texas and from neighboring school districts. At the bottom of slides number 8, 9, 10, and 11, it stated that the approaches, meets, and masters are approximate numbers and internally calculated by Alief ISD. My first concern is to question why the district is using its own percentages as opposed to the data from TEA, which will be used to hold the district accountable by our state and federal government. My second concern is the manner in which the narrative is presented to the public to infer that Alief ISD's data results are relatively close to that of the results of the state of Texas. Thus, if the information is not pleasing to the audience, then the district is merely relatively close to what is happening around the state or relatively close to what is happening in neighboring school districts. My third concern is the manner in which the data is presented always implies that the annual performance report is derived solely from the results of our student STAR test results, when that is not the case. The STAR results are only a small percentage of what is calculated in domain 1, 2, and 3 to tabulate the district's accountability rating. Once scores are determined for each domain, the best score from domain 1 or domain 2 is used to make up 70% of the district's or campus's score. In domain 2 of STAR results in college and career readiness, there is a bell curve in accountability rating for students that are on free and reduced lunch, which 87% of Alief ISD students are on free and reduced lunch. So comparing Alief data to other districts' data or data from that of the state of Texas without acknowledging that Alief's data was graded on a curve is intentionally misleading. My last concern with the misappropriation of the district's data is for the message that it sends to our hardworking teachers. For 11 months out of each year, the district totes on doing things the Alief way and all of the extra work that our educators are required to implement to meet the needs of our unique demographics of students. Yet during the 12th month of the annual performance report cycle, you all always compare all of the extra hard work to the scores of neighboring districts in the state of Texas who produce similar or better results without all of the extra that comes along with doing things the Alief way and still coming up short. What this presentation says to me is that Alief teachers can go to other school districts, do less, and be required to do less and still produce better results and get pay increases for being newly hired educators to that district. Slide number 3 stated that the annual report included a violent and criminal incident report and a violence prevention and violence intervention policies and procedures. However, that information was not presented, nor was that data included in the presentation. I would like to know why that information was not presented within your presentation. If the district is going to continue to compare Alief ISD's data to other school districts' data, can you all at least select school districts that have similarly situated populace of students or as opposed to simply selecting those whom are close in proximity to Alief's final data results? Can you all please also post the annual performance report on the district's website for multiple school years as opposed to only posting the most recent report so that parents and community members can compare the data? My request would be to post and maintain at least 3 to 5 years of total reports. In your response, I'm seeking something more than the usual. Alief ISD is only required by law to do the legal limit of reporting posting. Damon Barone, Alief ISD, parent, taxpayer, and alumnus. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barone.
Thank you for your questions. I may need a little bit more notes, I think, to be able to definitely to address them all. So if you don't mind, if you can just go through, I think you mentioned 3 concerns at the beginning. The first one was the approach, meets, and masters internally calculated.
Right. There's
right.
a bell curve for that used by the population of our community or our district of students.
That's number, I think that was number 2 with the different domains. So that's relative performance, and I'll be more than happy to explain that. Yes. What was the third concern?
Basically, if you're going to compare, like you show us multiple information compared to other data, I'm not concerned about other districts. I want to know how our kids are doing here. If I wanted to see KDISD's information, I'd move my kids to KD. So
Right.
give me multiple years of Alief data that I can compare, as opposed to selecting something that looks similar to our end results to go, hey, we're close to the state, or hey, we're close to KDISD, but they're doing way less. We shouldn't be comparing ourselves to other districts when I want to know how our kids are doing.
Very good. Thank you for your questions. So I'll take the first one, and I'll just kind of provide a little bit more background on the reason why the AMM is internally calculated. So on the taper report, when you look at the taper report, the state gives us percentage for approaches and above, meets and above, and masters. For us to create the AMM, we have to average those three numbers and create them internally. On the accountability side, the state does publish an AMM, but that comes in the accountability reports. On the taper, we have to create that AMM, and we do it just to simply allow our viewers and our community to look at a number that is kind of easily compared, and that's something that they are familiar with because we use AMM frequently. So the taper report does not give us AMM averages. We have to create them internally. They're a pretty good approximation of the final numbers that we can compare, maybe eyeball with the accountability reports, but because we create them ourselves, we always want to make sure that we are representing those numbers by saying that they are internally created. Every other number, whether it's approaches, meets, and masters, we have actually a PDF source to it, so we can go back and see exactly where that approaches and above, meets and above, and masters number came from. But for AMM, we kind of put them in a spreadsheet and we calculate them internally. When it comes to relative performance, which is domain 2B on the state accountability system, we do have three different domains in this system that fall kind of under domain 1, which is the student achievement. So this is where the state assesses the performance of districts, whether students met that standard or not, period. That's domain 1. Domain 2A is really the growth. So schools and districts are given credit for students who grew from one year to another. Domain 2B is that relative performance that really looks at the performance of schools and districts compared to other districts that are similar in economically disadvantaged rates. So the reason why the state does that is from an equity perspective. So we don't necessarily compare maybe districts that are 90% economically disadvantaged to districts maybe that have 2% economically disadvantaged. And based on that comparison that the state does, they adjust their performance in that particular domain. So they almost give campuses and districts that have higher economically disadvantaged percentages like a bump because of the performance, because of the student body that they serve. When it comes to the state data, we definitely look at the state. This is kind of one benchmark or one target that we have. We are behind the state. We have been since 2019. So it is a target that we aim for. We want to meet and exceed. And definitely we want to keep exceeding and keep reaching higher standards. But definitely the state is one indicator that we look at. When we look at neighboring school districts or districts that are similar to us, we have that information for all districts across the state. And we actually download it in a spreadsheet and analyze it and look at it and dissect it from different angles. We select the ones that maybe are similar to size, some that are of interest because they're geographically close to us, that our community looks at. We select some that are similar to economically disadvantaged rates, and we have a much larger list that we look at. In fact, we have just recently looked at the 40 school districts. Dr. Mays has asked us to share that information. So we looked at the 40 largest school districts across the state. We looked at their performance by student group, and we looked at their makeup. So percent of economically disadvantaged, percent of limited English proficient, percent of emergent bilingual, and so forth. So the state is one indicator that we look at. We look at other districts as well, but we also want to compare ourselves and want to see that trend always going up. When it comes to the annual report, at this point on our website, we have 2 years of annual reports. So we have the 2021, we kept it up there, and we updated the 21-22. And we'll be happy to go back and add previous ones, and in the future, we can keep them there for multiple years, just like we've done this year. That's definitely an easy one.
Yeah, I would just add, one of the things that hopefully you all heard Dr. Amin say is could be, maybe, possibly. The targets have not been set. You know, I think if there's anything that we want to be angry about, I think that would be the thing that we would be angry about, is that the state has not let us know what this target is going to be for districts across the state. And so I think that that's pretty significant, because at this point, even with you know, Dr. Amin and her level of skill designing something that can give us a sense of where we are, we still don't know if that's going to be good enough, because the state hadn't, again, given us the finish line yet. So I think that's one thing to note. I think the other component that she's sharing with you all, and that the public, and of course our school leaders need to know, is that, you know, to the point, we want to standardize a lot of these practices. Transparency being one of those key pieces. As we shared the data today, I mean, we're looking at, like she said, you know, like districts across the state, but the goal is to always to excel. We recognize that we do have a challenging population, but it's, you know, it's something that we all feel like that we can do if we look at the data in the way that we're looking at it tonight. And so we can only get better, and we can only get stronger. The next meeting that we have is going to take us on a deeper dive into some of the areas that were mentioned tonight. But in the spirit of full transparency, we want to be able to look at the data the same way that we are encouraging our district leaders and teachers to do. So just know that that's going to be something that's a pretty consistent theme as we dive into this work together.
Thank you. Do we have another comment from the community?
Greetings, Damon Barone, Alief ISD parent, taxpayer, and alumnus. Just want to piggyback on some of the things that you said, and also justify why you spoke about comparing our district data to the state and seeing how we're doing. That's exactly why I feel as though it's important to have multiple years of our own data, because even if we're far off from the state, the fact that I can see growth in our own data, to me, precedes whether we're relatively close to the state or other districts. If we've jumped 10% each year, to me, that's better than being close to the state. So that's why I'm asking for that. In regards to the report, multiple years of reports being on the website, that was recently done because there was only one report on there the other day. So y'all must have just done that. That's not typical practice. And then my last concern is closing the gap is what I was talking about. My last concern is House Bill 3 requires that the board goals drive student performance. So I would have liked to see you all talk about how the board's goals either helped or hindered increase in performance in our district, or how those goals can be adjusted now that they've been implemented in what you saw, as opposed to, again, seeing what other districts are doing, as opposed to my district and what the state is doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I got. I'm not going to go up there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barone. All right. Have we heard from all members of the public desiring to speak on this topic? Okay, thank you. Now, at this time, I would like to close this session of the public hearing. And do we have any questions or comments from my colleagues? Okay, Trustee Ann